Welcome back to Daily Jaylee Auction Draft Fantasy Sports. We're going to be looking at baseball here today. Big shout out to all the subscribers. People are watching. This is why I'm doing it, because I'm going to take you to the fantasy playoffs in all your leagues. So stick with me. We're going to keep it going. I went into the lab this weekend. I got lots of comments. Had to go a little deeper into the player pool, find that mid-tier talent. And I'm going to try to cover everything with you here today. We'll see how long it takes. Let's start with why play auction. Play fantasy baseball auction. Fantasy baseball is the granddaddy of all fantasy sports. It's not for the casual player. It's not for the faint of heart. If you want to get into something, you want to dabble, you want to not manage too much, you're playing fantasy football. If you want it to be easy, you want the stats to come easy, you're playing fantasy basketball. But you don't just casually get into baseball. This is fantasy baseball. The player pool is huge. The season is long. The management is long. And if you're not into the grind, the pre-All-Star break, post-All-Star break grind, you're not going to win fantasy baseball leagues. So take the next step and do auction draft. Why stick with Snake? Snake is archaic. Snake reminds me of when fantasy leagues used to be on paper in guys' notebooks. That's when they were doing Snake. Because how could they do an auction? But everything is online now. Do an auction. It's so much better. The draft is more exciting. You'll love your team. You can control your team. We don't have to discuss which round. And, just for the players on the cusp, you have no control. There's 9 guys you're not going to get on the cusp. And then you're going to sit and you're going to watch. So man up. Make the next step. Play fantasy baseball. Auction draft. So this whole thing is geared behind Yahoo free auction leagues because they're free. We can get in. You can have a good auction. You can get ready. You can give some auction momentum. And what I've realized is that the ADP groupthink is in full effect. Listening to the Sleeper Pod, Sleeper and the Bust, NFBC, and they got to crop the data. They don't want the early data. They don't want the December data. They don't want the November data. They got to crop the data. They bring in the ADP, and then they talk about it, and they talk about what they're willing to pay, but they're only talking about which round they want to take guys in. And so this ADP groupthink is just, here it goes. It's going to reverberate. It's going everywhere. And so I'm going to hear about it, but I'm not going to look at it. I'm not just going to make a list off of that. We're here making an organic list, organizing the players from last year's stats, figuring out what the league is going to be like next season. Because in reality, ADP is just an overreaction to last season. It's last season's numbers with feelings about who burnt me and who broke out that I didn't get, and who burnt me is going to drop, who you missed out on is going to rise too much, and it's just distorted. So we're looking at the real thing here. And as I get ready and keep preparing this, I want to explain how I'm doing it so that you can do it yourself. You're going to become a better player. At this point, honestly, I'm a fantasy baseball expert. Just a self-studied, I go hard in the paint fantasy expert. And I hear stuff out there, and I just have to rebut it. So, number one, here's an example. David Peralta is not good. David Peralta is not good. Sleeper and the Bus is on there going, oh, look at David Peralta. I don't understand why he's so undervalued. Ooh, he's going to be a steal. And so when they're talking about ADP, you're going to go out, you're going to listen to Sleeper and say, well, Paul Scorer said this. So that David Peralta, I'm going to take him in 5 or 6. No, David Peralta is trash. He's going to burn you. He has the same, let me just give you some notes. David Peralta has the same hit tool as a Billy Hamilton. His contact rates look just like Billy Hamilton's. And the reason we don't want Billy Hamilton is because he can't hit. So why would we go and get David Peralta? David Peralta's home run per fly ball rate was 23%. That means like almost a quarter. 1 of every 4 of David Peralta's fly balls, which are limited because he's a ground ball hitter, went out of the park. That's not going to happen again. So he has no speed. The power is going to come down. He's pull happy. He's turning 31. Absolutely do not pay for David Peralta. But let me show you the flip. And this is going to require a little segue. There's a magic number. It's 1,500 plate appearances. I don't know when I picked this up. I don't know who said it, but it stuck with me. And nobody's saying it every season. I remember it. I remember 1,500 plate appearances. And it's kind of like in football, third-year wide receivers or second-year basketball players or, different kind of cliches. The 27-year-old hitter. It's a breakout threshold. So you're looking for guys that it takes a while to adjust to major league pitching. They've got to see the off-speed stuff. There's this game of cat and mouse with pitching. Pitchers are trying to learn what hitters can't handle, and then hitters are readjusting, and they're learning to handle what pitchers are giving them. And it's who can keep making adjustments. The adjustments happen in season. They happen between seasons. But the magic number for hitters is 1,500 plate appearances. And that's why small sample size hitters sometimes will lag behind. They haven't seen everything. They haven't made all the adjustments. But right around that threshold, guys tend to break out. You could see this with Marcell Ozuna, who I was early on because the plate appearances were right. And sometimes if a guy has 1,350, 1,400, maybe the breakout happens in season. So nobody's going to even know that's going to happen. So my guy here, I'm just reading the numbers, and I'm telling you right now, the projections are not good. Take projections like Steamer on Fangraphs with just a grain of salt. They just can tell you a little bit. They can maybe tell you, does this guy have some speed or some power? But don't go by them, because I'll tell you who's going to break out, and it makes me feel kind of gross to say it, but the numbers are making it obvious, is Max Kepler. Max Kepler of the Minnesota Twins is going to break out. He's gotten better every season. His contact rates are very good. His fly ball rates are good. He's in a stacked lineup. Minnesota went out and got Nelson Cruz, C.J. Cron, Jonathan Scope. They added a lot of different talent in there. And right in the back of that is going to be Max Kepler. So in a weird way, Minnesota looks like they're going to try to make a run at something. Rosario is going to take a step forward. And so these are the kinds of things that you got to be able to pick out. That David Peralta's trash, don't take him, and go get Max Kepler for free. And nobody's going to jump on Max Kepler because Steamers completely slept on him. And after putting that all together, I kind of want to give Berrios a bump up, because he's going to have lineup protection now. He's in a soft division, and if he gets a little bit better, we're looking at a lot of wins to go with his stuff. So there's an example of how we break it down, how we avoid ADP groupthink. And today's session a little bit is going to be about how I start managing the stats. Because the key is to start to filter out, and we just went through top tier. We went through undeniable, like sexy hitters. We raised them up. We did pitching, aces, next level, number 2 starters. So we got a lot of players that we went through, and we were looking at the whole league. So the next step I did here today is let me go position by position and see who bumped up. So today I'm going to cover some outfielders, some third base, some short, some second, and some first, the 5 positions, and we're going to see who the mid-tier players were. But in doing this, I got to point out a couple tips. Go into Fangraphs, do a positional sort, look at the yearly numbers, and then look at the second half numbers. I care more about second half numbers because that's the most recent, as opposed to first half, which is kind of full season because the first half is longer than the second half. So I'm just looking at second half. Let me see if there's anybody who got it going late. And one thing is, if guys disappear or you want to look at a guy who got called up late, you might have to change the sample size and change the number of plate appearances. Because I noticed, because of Trout's injury, underqualified, he'll just disappear off the list. I mean, I know Mike Trout isn't disappearing off of any list. So then I had to go and I had to tinker, change that sample size, and you'll get all the players. And the big key today is I'm diving deeper into contact rates. We talked about O-swing, swinging outside the zone is chasing. In the zone contact, Z contact. And what these fantasy analysts want to tell you is they want to tell you their K rate or their walk rate. But in reality, there's underlying numbers. You're not going to have a good walk rate if you have a bad O-swing rate that you're chasing at stuff. But if you're laying off pitches outside the zone, it's going to lead to a walk rate. And your swinging strike rate, your whiff rate, it's going to indicate your K rate, because you're not going to be able to not swing at certain times, etc. So there's underlying numbers that are giving rise to the hitting numbers and the strikeout and the walk numbers, and we go dig a little deeper into there. And so the big tip for today is O swing, swinging outside the zone, can be complemented, or it's okay if your O contact rate is good. If you can hit it, if it's off the plate and you can still go get it, that's kind of the cure for a bad O swing or a higher O swing. And there's certain players that have this, and there's some that don't. Like, what's his name here? Carpenter. Carpenter, his O swing's a little bit high, and his O contact is low. I need an O contact up in the 70s, high 60s, even 80%, where you can go out and get that stuff off the plate. And that's for guys like Jose Ramirez or Lindor. The O swing might be a little high, but the O contact is great. And then you'll see a reason why Mookie Betts is so dominant, because his O swing is low and his O contact is high. I mean, he has complete control over the strike zone. Here's a little tip today. If you want to do something a little different, Mookie is a better hitter than Trout. He's got a better hit tool. The only thing that Mookie doesn't have on Trout is probably about 3 inches and 30 pounds. So Trout's just a bigger dude. He's more durable. The track record's longer. His numbers are in line with like Mickey Mantle. And that's why we really don't pass on Trout. But if you want to get cute, if you want to pay in an auction and get a top guy and not pay exactly Trout money, and if he came at value, it's Mookie. Because everything Mookie does is just a little tick better than Trout. And that brings me to another thing. We got to talk about ticks. A little tick is what makes a guy better. A fastball that's 95 is that much better than a fastball at 94, just a tick. A contact rate of 89 over 85, just 3 ticks, that makes all the difference. That's the difference in the hitters. So we're looking at very subtle, gradual changes in numbers, and that's how we want to make some of these decisions. So let me keep going here. I'm going to jump into some players. Let me make sure I had some other notes here. Yeah, I got a couple more things. As speed kind of disappears, kind of fades, and I mean speed, I want legit speed. I want 20 steal, 10, 9. I mean, those are just incidental steals that a guy may get, but he's not really going to run. It's a 162-game season. Are you going to be happy with 10 steals? Do you look forward for waiting for 10 steals? 20 is kind of the minimum. Even power. I mean, power, I need 25 home runs. I don't want to be looking around at 18 home runs. That's not a lot of power. So as we get into this next tier, we want to lean power. As speed starts to disappear, I want home runs, because the home run is going to give me the RBI and the run. And another thing in reviewing contact rates, I think I have to fade Baez and Alberto Mondesi. And Mondesi reminds me of a guy going back a couple seasons, Keon Broxton. Keon Broxton was a speed, power terror. You were thinking, oh my God, this guy could hit 20 home runs and take 40 bases. Well, the problem was he couldn't hit. He couldn't make contact. And then when he went through massive droughts and pitchers were throwing him off-speed stuff he couldn't handle, he got sent down. He lost playing time. And Mondesi's contact rate, sub 80% at 78%. I don't know how he's going to hit 25 home runs and get on base enough to take 45 bases. And the same with Baez. I mean, I understand these guys are exciting and toolsy, but I don't think I'm ready to overpay for them this season. So those are my couple tips for you. Play auction draft. You've done all the work. You're ready for a huge season. I mean, love your team. Get into it. So now I'm going to jump over to the players, and we're going to start in the outfield. There's 4 guys here that are important to push up your draft boards. And I'm talking about Yasiel Puig, Eloy Jimenez, McCutchen, and Max Kepler, who I mentioned earlier. So Puig's going to be 27. He got a park change. He's getting out of LA. He's getting out of the big lights. And we're just taking him off of physical tools. If you've ever seen this guy, he's an absolute stud. He had a reverse split last season. That's where he's supposed to hit the other-handed pitcher, but he's not. I just think that Puig's young enough. There's enough power speed that let's take another risk on him. We haven't seen the best from the young 27-year-old Cuban. So I'm going to get back in there. In terms of prospects, Eloy Jimenez. Oh, yes. Oh, yeah. He's going to come up. He's going to hit for average. This guy's huge. He has light tower power. I hope that he doesn't break camp because that's going to suppress his value. And honestly, I'll wait 2 weeks for a prospect. I'll wait for Vlad. I'll wait like I waited for Acuna last year. And I'll wait for Eloy. And I'll take him early because when he gets on the scene, he splashes on and he hits for average and power. He's gonna shoot up drafts. And will you wait 2 weeks of a 24-week season for a guy that's gonna be a third round pick? Yeah. Eloy Jimenez. Andrew McCutchen, if you want old man safe, he's not going to break out. He's not going to start stealing more bases, but his hit tool's legit. He changed parks. He's in a better park. He got out of San Francisco. So if you need that safe, get it over, I like old players that are solid, McCutchen's one of those just kind of all-time studs. And now I got to scan across the list here. I'm going to jump over to shortstop because I want to talk about Gleyber Torres. Gleyber Torres showed flashes last year. He's a young prospect. In terms of sexiness, I think he's got to be up there. He's going to give you that shortstop eligibility. So I'm going to bump Gleyber way up. We haven't seen it yet, but he's young and he's a stud, so we got to throw him in there. First base, as you will see later, is going to go off a cliff. And so there's two names here. I like Abreu of the White Sox, and finally Joey Gallo, the golden sombrero himself. After all the other first base options disappear, you get past your Votto, your Encarnacion, maybe you take Abreu above Encarnacion. You get back in on this slugger because you need somebody who's going to at least be solid at your first base. And then we just hope that Gallo makes more contact. We know there's going to be ridiculous numbers of home runs, so just get back in there. And now it drops down a little bit lower here. I keep mentioning Hicks and Kane, and honestly, I've kind of bought into Hicks. He gets injured a lot, but power speed-wise, we're going to give Hicks a little bit of respect. And now I've got the three old men as we come across the diamond. At third base, Justin Turner. Yeah, he's getting older. Yeah, he gets dinged up, but this guy is launch angle revolution. He makes great contact. He's probably going to hit third for the Dodgers. And if you like a little bit older guys and you're willing to let him break down you in the season, there's Justin Turner. You want to come over to second base? You got Robinson Cano. Yeah, he's getting older, but this is a legend. This guy will continue to make adjustments throughout the season. He's a professional hitter. And then if you want to come over to 1B, I mean, his body's falling apart on him. His hips are falling apart. You got Miguel Cabrera. So these are kind of your old man options. They're going to populate that middle tier. And if you need some safety, you need somebody who you don't want to take any surprise on, take some of those old men. Jump back over to outfield. Michael Conforto, Kyle Schwarber, Ender Inciarte, Malik Smith, and I'm putting Robles in here. And Robles might go first for me because I want to be there first on prospects. I want to reach for a guy like Robles who might take a ton of bases and hit some home runs. But this group right here, Conforto's been injury-riddled. He's had some shoulder issues, shoulder surgery. He started off slow. But when Conforto gets it going, we keep seeing flashes that, is this guy a superstar? Is he ready to make the next step? I want to get back in on Michael Conforto. Kyle Schwarber, elite prospect. Then he destroyed his knee. Then he came back and he got sent down. And then he lost like 80 pounds. And I just think Schwarber's got more going for him. You know you're going to get power. He's leaning power. He might get platooned. He might sit against lefties, I think. We don't like that. Inciarte, what really hurt him last season is he got bumped down to the 9-hole. And batting in the top of the order is going to get you more at-bats because as the lineup turns over, it's going to turn over the top first. Batting at the bottom, you're going to miss that last plate appearance. That makes the difference in a player. But Inciarte's got some speed. He's got some hit tool. He's going to give you some late speed, some value there. Malik Smith. And now, again, Sleeper wants to trash Malik Smith. But he's okay. He's decent. He's a legit speed threat. He's a burner. He might be 40 or 50 bases. If you're looking for that late speed, if you've been drafting power all the way through the draft, if you took JD and Arenado early, throw in your Malik Smith. Looks like he's batting leadoff, and he's going to give you a load of bases. And what I'm doing here is I'm not going to succumb to just regular old ADP groupthink. I'm going to go down, and I'm going to push up who has the potential to break out. And it's pretty clear here. Third base is a good example of that because third base gets really, really bad. There's no speed at third base, so you have to get power. So just below Justin Turner, I've bumped up Andujar. I think it's Miguel Andujar of the Yankees. This guy's young. He hit in the preseason. Then he got called up. I think he was just a placeholder, but he hit too well. His zone contact rate is really good. He chases a little bit, but he can also, his O contact rate is good. So Andujar is probably going to keep hitting. What if he works hard? What if he says, you know what? I was slighted as a prospect. I'm the real deal. He could come back, hit for average, hit for power. You got to get back in on Andujar at third base for upside, for breakout potential. Devers of Boston, another guy, small sample size, broke hearts. Is going to fall back off. He's 22. Let's give him a break. He hasn't hit 1,500 plate appearances. So there's more left for Devers. It might not be this season. It might be next season. But let's get there early just in case. And let me just take a segue into draft strategy. I don't believe in, if you took some risky players, then you got to take some safe players. No, I have another kind of plot for that. I take risky, high upside players every single round, over and over and over. Every pick is high upside. And that's how I think you win fantasy leagues. We're not trying to be decent. We're not trying to look back and go, my team was okay. I made some safe picks. Because what about if that floor drops just a little bit? At the end, to win a fantasy baseball league first and head-to-head, you've got to get to the playoffs. So you've got to be a top team to get there. And then it takes luck. It takes magic. It takes end-of-the-season management, waiver wire grind, and lineup setting to win in the last 4 weeks. At that point, you really have to know the league intimately. But the way I get there is upside after upside after upside hitting, multiple guys hitting, and my team blows up. And I have what is like a dominant team that's substantially better than other teams. So just keep taking upside, 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 upside again. As opposed to balancing risk with safety. I mean, safety's not going to get you there. Safety's going to get you an average team. But anyways, sorry about the rant. Back into third base. It's going to fall off, but if you want to get some cheap power late, you're going to be okay with Moustakas, probably Shaw. We're talking about 25 home runs, no speed, some ribbies. These guys are okay. And then I'll mention Max Muncy. I don't know. He had good contact rates last season. He fell off after the home run derby. Don't let anyone tell you. If your player goes and does the home run derby, he's going to be gassed. He's going to be trash in the second half of the season. That's what happened to Max Muncy last season. He went into the derby. He basically gave all the second half home runs. They were all done in the derby, and he fell off the map. Maybe he recharges. Maybe he gets playing time. I'm not sure. We're going to talk about him there. Shortstop is so deep. And there's 6 guys here that are going to get the job done. They're going to give you different things. It's Segura, DeJong, Andrews, Jorge Polanco of the Twins, Simmons, and Gregorius. And they're just different kind of players. Segura is the journeyman. He gets injured. He pulls hamstrings, but he takes bases and he's got a good eye. So he's obviously the late mid-tier shortstop you need to get. DeJong is my favorite of this group. DeJong is a shortstop middle infielder with power. And the hit tool is pretty good. So definitely look for DeJong at this tier. We got Andrus. Andrus is he's the veteran. He's the journeyman, probably 30 years old, 31. Suffered a terrible injury last year to the elbow. It was fluky. It wasn't his fault. Other than that, he's a warrior. So if you want to take Andrus at value, he'll give you a little bit of pop. He'll play every day. He's a good shortstop. Jorge Polanco, I just like the hit tool. I'm back talking about the Minnesota Twins. It's not like I like the Minnesota Twins. I just keep seeing guys, and I keep seeing the lineup. I'm like, these guys are going to be okay. His counting stats aren't great. He doesn't hit a lot of home runs. He doesn't steal. But he's going to get on base. He's going to score runs. Maybe he makes a step forward. We got Andrelton Simmons, the late bloomer, the defensive specialist, plays every day, does not strike out, This guy doesn't strike out. He takes his walks, a little bit of power, no speed, so the counting stats aren't there, but he's okay. He'll give you average. And Didi Gregorius. Gregorius on the first half, it wasn't there, but he showed you on the second half it wasn't there. The first half he was amazing, and then he cooled off. So we're going to look at Didi. He's got some offense for you. And after that, it kind of falls off. I don't want to go too much deeper into shortstop. I got some other names that are late. I'm going to mention Adames, Rosario of the Mets, and Anderson of the White Sox. But other than that, we got to get back in at that mid-tier and kind of deal with somebody. My guy there is probably DeJong. We're going to look at the prices later. It's my other thing. So I'm just waiting. I'm not talking prices because Yahoo hasn't opened up its fantasy baseball yet. So we're kind of building up to that. We're getting prepared. It's January still. Pitchers and catchers haven't reported, but we got to see what the league looks like from last season. We bounce over to second base. Talked about Cano if you want a veteran to give you some power. Fine. The guy who is finally there, the uber prospect, is Jurickson Profar, traded to the A's. Yeah, I like Profar because he was an uber talented prospect. Shoulder injuries derailed him, took him a while to get back. Suddenly he starts to play and Texas just ships him out. So Texas didn't want to deal with him, but the A's are a heady team. They get value. That's the Billy Bean ball or whatever they call the system over there. They know that Jurickson Profar is good. He's going to be home runs and steals. Unfortunately, the Oakland Coliseum is a bad place to hit. That suppresses power. We'll see. Maybe he's only 15-15, but he's a guy at second base. If you're looking for upside, for something to just magic to happen. Another guy like that, Rougned Odor. It's been up and down for Rougned. He's a hothead. We thought he was great, and then he just hit like 205, and then he got a little better. You don't know what you're going to get, but he's young enough. Keep buying some Odor. If you want to hit and suddenly someone breaks out, it'll be Odor. He puts it together, hits 260, gives you 35 home runs. Maybe it's in the realm of possibility. I want that a little bit more than I say maybe Dozier or Old Man D. Gordon, who are kind of in this conversation. There's two other names here that are subtle. Cesar Hernandez. So I think I talked a little trash about him in earlier videos. But I think he's toolsy. I think he's legit. The numbers say Cesar Hernandez is going to get it done for you at second base. And here's a little segue. I haven't seen Yahoo's positional analysis yet, but multi-position eligibility put the guy at the rarest position. And so while shortstop may look deep and second base looks shallow, what's going to happen is a lot of these guys are multi-position second and short. So it's not going to be as deep as you think, because a lot of those shortstops are going to be playing second base. Or your outfielders are going to be playing first base. So, like something I did, I took Matt Olson because first base is so terrible. I took him out of the outfield. I got outfielders. I didn't even mention outfielders that are going to be good this season. I moved him over to first base. If you got your shortstop and your second, I think second base is weaker, move your shortstops over to second base, etc. If somebody has catcher eligibility, he plays some first base, he's going to catcher. So just move guys over to the weakest position. That's likely where they're going to go. So there's a little bit of an illusion that shortstop is that deep because second is so bad, some of those guys are going to be pulled over. But these are the two names who I think are interesting. It's Jonathan Villar, who's going to be expensive because what happened was he got traded to Baltimore. He got picked up off of waiver wires late in the season, and he just went on a tear. He won fantasy leagues. He won me a fantasy league because he was just taking tons of bases. They let him run wild. He's got speed. He said he wanted to hit like Joey Votto. He got the opportunity. He hit leadoff. He has power. So suddenly Villar is like a top 50 player. He's got some contact issues. It's not going to be perfect. The average isn't going to be perfect. But if you want upside, Villar has it. He has like a 60 base season in the MLB, so we know the kind of skills Villar has. He could be the best of these mid-round second basemen. Jump him up over Profar. My last guy on the second base list is Yoan Moncada. I watched a lot of Moncada, and his contact is so bad. His batting average plummeted, but he's got the eye. He was in the trade for Chris Sale. He's built like a tank. He can steal bases and he can have power. So he's 4 cat, 5 cat if his average got up. He's just so young. And when it clicks with Moncada, you're going to want to be there. Because if he gets on base, there's going to be tons of bases. If he starts making better contact, there's going to be home runs. And because he killed people last year, because he was just a strikeout monster, he's going to be cheap. He's not going to be that hard to get. But in terms of young upside and getting somebody to break out, it's Yoan Moncada. I'm going to jump across because, again, people want to go through their one list. They want to go through all their shortstops and down to eternity 30 of them, and they want to go through 50 outfielders. That's fine. But I need these guys relatively to each other. I don't want to get into positional desperation. Like, oh my God, I don't have a second baseman. I'm just going to take one now. Because that could be a mistake. That second baseman could be way lower than a whole bunch of outfielders. Go fill your outfield out. Go put guys in the utility spot. Don't take a second baseman just because it's been 6 rounds and you think now you need a middle infielder. You've got to know where these guys are horizontally relative to each other. First base is just bad. And if you have to reach down, you're going to look at like a CJ Cron in Minnesota, maybe old man Carlos Santana, who got sent back to Cleveland, or even Ian Desmond, whose surprise was 2020 last season. Still kind of hanging in there, gives you a little power, a little speed at the first base. But again, I don't love these guys. I don't want to get caught there, but I know I've got some options to fall back on. And just like Gary Sanchez, who I'm the highest on, we got to mention one catcher here, Wilson Contreras of the Cubs. The hit tool didn't come all the way together, but he's young enough. He's studly enough to break out. And if you want a little signature piece so that you don't have to drive yourself crazy shuffling through catchers and watching them just be trash, go out and get yourself a little Wilson Contreras. He's like a mid-tier catcher. Don't overpay for catcher. But if he's cheap and you want to make your team look nice, kind of like a style piece, put some Contreras out there. So that was it. I flew through some players. Right now they're kind of all clustered in. I know that when I come down to this group, they're here. I typically know I'm just going to draft the youngest, most upsided player. But what I'm going to do, go deeper on these guys, see if I can find some more trends, drop them into my custom generated report and Fangraphs, and start to sort through. All right, who's really the best from here? Regardless of position, which player is just going to be the best hitter? And start to see who you want to get for value in these mid-rounds. And I'm not that concerned with where the pitchers fall in yet. I will start to break them up a little bit further. But in the end, pitching is kind of situational. You're either gonna take some more hitting, or you decide, pitching's getting light, I got to go over here. Or if there's a big pitching run, the whole league started taking pitching because they were in a panic from last season. Maybe you got to get back in. You got to jump over to your hitters. But take a look at those guys. Give me questions. I love questions, sure. The other thing is, I'll give you a definitive answer. You're not going to ask me a question and I go, oh, well, it depends on team construction. If this depends on the size of the league, if it's an OBP league, then you're going to... No, I'm going to go into the numbers, I'm going to formulate an opinion, and I'm going to give it to you. I'm not going to equivocate. I'm not going to send you home to do more research. So feel free to ask me questions. You can at me at Twitter at DailyJLee. We're going to keep this going. We're going to dominate leagues. We're going to dominate auction leagues for sure. Got some more tips for you. Let's go to the fantasy baseball playoffs. It's your boy. I'm out.